Hey everybody, and welcome back to a new video. This week, guys, I'm going to show you how to do an upgrade on the Tiny Whoop. So if you remember, a couple months back we did the video on how I showed you how to build a Tiny Whoop with the Fury Bee F36 that you can get from GearBest, along with the headset that you need for FPV and the all-in-one camera, receiver, everything that you would need for $100 to get you going on a really inexpensive FPV machine. So we built that in the last couple months. If you didn't watch that video, I will put a box up at the top here that you guys can watch that particular video. So just to let you guys know, this video actually was already previously recorded, and unfortunately my SD card decided it did not want to keep the video and it erased all the video. So I've kind of already built this, so I'm going back and kind of showing you guys how I did the build. So I apologize for that in advance. So what this basically takes is you can use your existing Fury Bee frame, is what I used, and all you really have to do is you just got to order a new, this is the Fury Bee F3 flight board. Now this comes pre-installed with Clean Flight, but I was able to flash it over to Betaflight. I just prefer Betaflight, that's my preferred. And then the secondary thing you're going to need is your upgraded motors. So the flight board cost about 20 bucks, and this one is integrated. You'll notice has an antenna. So it's got an integrated receiver. It's an FR Sky receiver. And the motors that I already have actually in here, these are the old ones, but the motors that I ordered here, these ones are for the Blade Inductrix. So they've actually got a little bit more power than the original motors here, and that's why I chose those. So first thing what you have to do to basically create this new Tiny Whoop here is you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to remove the original board. Now this can be a little bit difficult, it's not too bad. So if you want to save the motors, you're going to want to unsolder those because they're soldered directly onto the board. If you don't really care, you can just go ahead and snip them, but I'm keeping them just in case I need them for another project or something else or whatnot. And I also kept the board just in case I want to build another one or something like that. So again, you'll have to remove the solder from these. It's kind of tiny little solder joints. You'll notice there's two, one for each of the negative and one for each of the positive for all four of the motors. So you'll have to remove those. And then once you do that, if you're keeping the motors, then you have to unsolder those. And that's pretty easy. That took me about 15 minutes, not very much time at all. That was actually really, really super easy. And then once you have that done, then you can basically just unscrew your flight board, and then you are left with your basic frame. Now once you get your motors undone, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to thread your new motors on. So before you take anything apart, or what I recommend is doing one motor at a time. Now they're luckily on, you can kind of see here there's red and blue, black and white, red and blue. So what I did was I just took off one of the red and blue, replaced it with one of the new motors, went to the next one, took off a black and white, put on a new black and white, and then just follow that same procedure. Because basically you're going to have two counterclockwise and two clockwise motors. So you'll have two colors of the same color, if that makes any sense. So once you've got your new ones threaded through here, you can kind of see how I did that. And they go through. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your flight board, and before you screw it down, you're going to want to make sure that you get those motors put in place. Now you'll notice with this new board, it is actually really, really nice, and I'll kind of try and zoom in here as best I can for you guys. But if you notice right here, these motors are actually just push-in, where the other ones were soldered, which is really, really sweet. Because if one of these brush motors tends to burn out, then you can just basically buy some new ones, pop them off, put the new one back on, boom, you're good to go. It won't take you very long to switch that out at all, which is really, really nice. I like that a lot. So once you've got those motors pushed in, the next step what you have to do is basically then you're going to go through and start adding on your flight board and pushing it down. Now it does come with some dampeners, these little kind of squishy things. that go under the screws. I decided not to use them just because they took up more room, and they were, you know, it's not that much weight, but every little bit of ounce or grams really matters with a tiny whoop. Every little bit counts on these guys. So I decided not to use those. Now, if you decide to go this route, if you look at the flight board, the way you can tell which way is forward and which way is back is really, really super simple. So if you look on here, you'll see this is the mini USB port, micro SD port right here on the back, and this is for your programming. So this is always the back of the drone, and up here where if you get the one with the integrated receiver, that is the front of the drone. So that's the way you'll know how it's going to sit. Otherwise, what you'd have to do is if you have it in reverse, then you have to program that inside of Betaflight, which is kind of a pain. It's not too horribly bad, but it's just a lot easier if you do it this way. So if you notice on here, I already have the pigtail for the power soldered on there, and it's a little bit different on this particular flight board. So you got your negative on this side, and you got your positive over here. Now normally, like on this original board here, you can see it had those two tabs, if you remember that, that were right next to each other. So it was kind of weird, but not too hard to solder those on. And then what I'm basically going to do once we're done is we're just going to solder those camera wires right on there. Now, there are two extra tabs on here for a 5-volt output, and it's right just above here. There's the ground and there's the positive. I chose not to do that because these little tabs are super tiny, and I just didn't want to cross them with anything on the board there, so I figured just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to solder them directly into the power just to make sure that they're all good to go. So that's the next step. So once you get this screwed on here, nice and tight, and you want to try and make it as level as possible. I know sometimes it's kind of hard with these little ones to not, make them as level, but try and make it as level as possible, because when you go to do your programming in Betaflight, that's what it's looking at. So if it's tilted up this way, then in Betaflight it's going to be this or like that or whatever. So try and make it as level as possible. You can use the trim buttons and trim it out as best you can, but it's nice to have a nice level quad. So again, once you get this screwed on, and you're going to get your pigtail soldered on, then your first thing what you want to do is you want to test to make sure that you got power going to your board. So before you do anything else, you plug in your battery, just like so, and you will see some flashing lights. So this is your power light right here, the big red one, and you'll have a blue and green one that will flash back and forth like that. Now once you have this bound up to your receiver, the blue light will stay solid, and it won't blink anymore. So that's the next step. So before you do anything else, any kind of programming or anything else, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to bind this to your receiver. So the next step, what you got to do is basically go ahead and you're going to get your FR Sky or whatever receiver you decide to use. So I will show you mine here. So this is my batteries are low, so I apologize for that, guys. You're probably going to hear the stupid message that tells me that the battery voltage is low. I just haven't gotten to the
switch warning.
One of my switches. There we go. Okay. All right. So what you got to do is you got to go in and basically you're going to bind it up. So the way you do that is you go here to your menu. This is the FR Sky. So you go here to the menu, and you go to your page, and then you go all the way down. Keep going all the way down.
Transmitter battery low.
There we go. That's the annoying little noise I was talking about, guys. So you're going to go all the way down past your trims, past everything,
Transmitter battery low,
until you get to the one that says internal receiver, and you've got a bind button. And now once you push that bind button like this,
transmitter battery low,
it starts doing that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because the batteries are low and I don't want it to remove anything. So when it's chiming like that, the next step what you're going to do is you're going to take your quad And while it's chiming, you're going to hold down your little button right here. You've got one right next to your receiver. So you're going to hold that down. While you're holding that little button down, you're going to plug this in. So you might want to, if you can't do it with just two hands, then you might want to have somebody plug it in for you. And then what you're going to do is you're going to just basically push this. I've already bound this up, so I'm not going to go through the steps. You're going to push the battery in, and you're going to wait. And what's going to happen is the little lights, that blue and yellow one I was talking about earlier, it's going to go to a solid. It's going to stop blinking, and then the little light will go out. And then once the little light goes out, then you'll know that this is bound up to your receiver. So whether you use the FL, the Fly Sky, the Tyrannus, whatever one you're going to use, it's basically, I think it's the same procedure for all of them. It's pretty similar to that. So again, once you have that, then you're all bound up and you're basically almost completely ready to go. So then after that, the next step is you're going to go ahead and basically solder on your camera. Or not solder on your camera, you're going to solder the leads for your camera onto the back of the battery. Just like that. Alright, so once you have this guy in place, and then you might want to use a piece of sticky tape down here to put your camera. They also make small little camera mounts that you can buy for the top. Just keep in mind, everything you add to your Tiny Whoop is going to weigh it down even more. So probably the lightest way to do it is either a piece of sticky tape, or I've also seen some people will use a small zip tie, and I've also seen people use a small rubber band. So whatever your poison is that you choose to pick is completely up to you. So once you've got your camera fixed on there and you got everything, then the next step what you got to do is you got to go into your beta flight and you're going to have to program the Tiny Whoop in there, which is really not that hard. It's actually pretty simple. So I'm not going to show you guys how to program the Tiny Whoop on this episode. I just kind of wanted to show you what we had done so far. So this was the old flight board. This was just the plain Jane that worked with that Fury B transmitter. And this flight board here, this one is an F3 racing board. And it's got the integrated, like I said, integrated receiver for FR Sky, which is pretty sweet. So I can use my Tyrannus to control this particular one, which is really, really nice. And then, you can do some upgrades. So this battery, you'll notice it's kind of a fatter one. This is a 500 milliamp. 3.7. So this I'm using from the King Kong 7mm that I did a review on a couple weeks back, and this is the same connector and everything, so I can actually use this to power the Tiny Whoop. So I've got 5 of these batteries, and then I've got 5 of the other batteries, so I've got a ton of batteries for this for the Tiny Whoop here. So that's all I have for this particular video right now. So in the next video, hopefully next week or later this week, depending on the weather, it's been really rainy and just really horrible weather, so not good flying conditions, so I can't really take this out and show you guys. And I'm not that good of an indoor pilot just yet. I'm working on it. My FPV skills are still working on it. I'm more of a line of sight pilot, so it's kind of been hard for me to make the transition over to FPV, but I'm getting the hang of it. And also, this coming week, guys, I've got a 3S battery coming for the King Kong 130. So once that battery comes in, we'll take this guy out and fly him with the 2S battery that came with him and my bigger 2S, and then we'll fly him with the 3S battery, and we'll see how much performance boost we get with that 3S versus the 2S. So yeah, I think that's pretty exciting. So guys, that's all I got for right now. Like I said, once I get this all connected and battery hooked up and everything like that, I've already programmed it in beta flight. I flew it around the house a little bit without the camera attached, and it's really good to go. I didn't really have to do very much in beta flight for PID tuning or anything like that. If you want to do that, you can. I may in the future, but I kept everything stock and it flew perfect, really, really nice. And I got to use my Tyrannus, which is even nicer. So, guys, if you like this tutorial, and again, I apologize ahead of time. I had to re-record this because, unfortunately, the original video that I did, it didn't stay on the SD card, and the SD card decided it wanted to wipe everything out that I had done, and I took you a step-by-step on how to do the upgrade on this, so I apologize for that ahead of time, guys. But thank you for all the awesome support. Thank you for all the followers. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, by next week, I got some new drones coming in, and we'll be doing some reviews on those, guys. And if there's anything that you want me to review, if there's anything you want me to check out, I've gotten some suggestions from people. Just keep in mind that GearBest may not always have the models that you guys want me to do reviews on. So I'm sometimes limited on that and what they send me, of course. So I try and do my best. In about the next couple weeks here, I'm going to actually be building my very own race drone, hopefully. We'll check on that. So I'll show you guys basically from the ground up how to build your own individual race drone. And I learned this from another YouTuber, so once we get to that particular video, I will give him credit for that as well. So guys, in the meantime, let's keep our drones up in the air, flying high. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for hanging out today. Have a great day.